welcome back to the channel where I introduce you to contemporary creation in Japan. My name is Agatha and I live in Tokyo. Today I'm so excited to present to you an exhibition, the first one created and organized by my cultural agency, IKO Art Discoveries. With this agency, I want to give an opportunity to experience art in new ways through programs, events, and creating. Here at Impact Hub Tokyo, you can discover MASAMI solo exhibition called Paysages, intérieurs, in English, inner landscape. So today we're going to discover her work together. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up to this video to support us. You can also follow us on Instagram for daily tips on where to see art in Japan, and as well subscribe to our newsletter to get all of those tips directly into your inbox. So let's go! Hello Masami, thank you for having us today in your exhibition. Your exhibition is called Paysages, intérieurs. In English, it's inner landscape. Can you tell us a little bit more about your universe and what does Paysages, intérieurs mean?
My exploration, artistic exploration, is centered on the life force. And life force equals the light and also frequency, and it's liberty and freedom. Yeah. Why I'm doing that? Because I perceive the things on the planet through the light since when I was small. So I understood that, and that is just energy. So I realized that in my mission on this planet is I I'm creating energy artwork bombs, spread them out and all over the world. So the energy, the artwork bombs is essential to the planet and also essential to our body planet as well. So that's my general concept. And usually I work on installation in the nature and also the big indoor space. But this paysage intérieur or kind of inner landscape or inner hardscape, because I've been working with landscape, but landscape outside of the body. So the kind of like our environment. But since I don't know, 5-6 years, I started to be really curious to see inner environment, inner landscape, because energetically, and it's same, outside and inside. And at the same time, and I wanted to create a smaller scale of work.
So you were mentioning your installation, which are quite bigger scale. We have a few fabric installation in the space today and during the exhibition. Can you tell us your connection? Like, how do you decide how big or how small a work is going to be? Like, what's your relationship with the dimension of the work?
I have a notion of small size, but I don't have any notion of the big size. I love really huge size because I'm always think about, first of all, the earth, and after a little bit like a universe. But in me, there is another world, more outside of this universe, or more. Yeah. So that's why I don't have any notion of the big size, but I like big. Kind of the work can not hold, but kind of embrace it. Embrace the planet, embrace the people.
So the viewer is at the heart of your concept. the people are at the heart of the concept. Because you were mentioning about the artworks that you do and you want to spread around, you want to share this with them. So that's really interesting that you have this idea of connection right from the beginning. And no matter the size or also the material you're using, the connection is there. And so in this exhibition, we're presenting works on paper and on fabric. And we have a few quite big dimensions, especially for Japan. And we have also small pieces on paper. Can you tell us about the process of going from fabric to paper and also going to a little bit smaller pieces?
When I started to do Silkscreen, but actually my original installation work, and I work with fiber, a natural fiber and the copper fiber. Easy for me to take fabric. And also the fabric is really flexible. So that kind of has that personality. How do you say, like the pretty more like property? It's really flexible. You know, we can change the form. If the wind blows, you know, it's naturally the fabric moves. So I like the movement and the freedom a little bit. And also really soft, you know, when we touched. It's a little bit like we put on the clothes. So kind of on our skin. I print Silkscreen on our skin, that like second skin.
I'm interested that you were mentioning about the movement of the fabric because as well as bigger installation, you also use performance in your work, and you often talk about using your body as also a way to create the work, especially when you were mentioning the pieces that we see here in the cafe side and as well on the other side. Can you tell us a little bit more about your relationship with your body and how you use it through the work?
More like I use not in consciousness. But for example, this work and my body is like a camera. But before print, there's some images. I use my consciousness to access to my inner landscape. Also, like personally, I really like a movement of the body. Always like I want to melt into the nature or energy, or so maybe that's why I always pay attention about my body, I think. So I'm a part of it. I cannot think separately.
I see also connection with the body of the viewer because in the installation work that you do, like the installation you just did at the airport at the Réunion island, you were mentioning that you're also creating encounters for people to play with the work, play with the installation. There is this also connection with the space people are in, almost like a game that you play with the viewer. As well as you were mentioning about these works that you sign the work, but it's not an indication about the way the work should be presenting.
But I think the installation work as well, my installation work and also Silkscreen works, actually they don't have any proper direction. So even I signed, that direction defines the final, final work. Really. So it depends on people, depends on the feeling a day. Maybe, we can change the direction. But it means like a part of my concept of life force. Because in our life, and we have infinite number of direction of life or dimension of life and the possibility of life. But our society kind of like decided to limit. But life is not like that. So that's why life force and energy and its freedom, searching and invisible power of art, its immortality. So
yeah, the fact that it's going to stay there. And there is also this aspect that the connection of the group of like the mankind and humanity.
And also not only visual artwork, the more like energy inside. That's what I'm working on. Of course, the visually is important, but like more important is invisible power of art, its immortality.
This reminds me of the piece which is in the exhibition, which you produced while doing a residency at the Salt Museum, and you were telling me about the properties of salt and why you decided to create a piece mixing salt in the material, which from when we start looking at the piece we could never imagine. So there is also this, I would say, playfulness or game that I like to have when visitors come in, of trying to imagine what could it be, what is inside this work. Like, it's invisible, but it's there, it's visible at the same time. So can you tell us a little bit more about that piece?
I found the little information. So since birth of the universe, property of salt exists in everywhere in this universe. So in our body, the things and the plant and the animals, actually we have original property of salt. The frequency stays in us. So like a radio station in the unconscious level, and we connect each other, we talk each other, we communicate with each other. So kind of a radio station are always like, we all connecting, and so unconsciously we share all the information, just imagination. But I was wondering, in how dynamic, what kind of adventure that salt have been doing until now, since the birth of the universe. That kind of like adventure, like exciting adventures, and also stays in our body too. This I wanted to say, that kind of thing, that through this research of salt. That story continues the paysage, intérieurs, inner landscape or inner hardscape.
Actually, when we look at each of your pieces, especially the works on paper, it feels like a story, it feels like an adventure, because there are so many, we can see so many different landscapes. We can imagine that we are in a cave, we can imagine we are underground, we can also imagine that we are maybe looking above from the clouds. And as well, the way you stacked the images, like the different Silkscreens which you decided to stack, which looks like an 8mm movie, feels as well like a story being told, like we're watching a story. It feels very like all the words are connected, and seeing them all in the space, do you have did your vision about them changed, or did you notice more things about them, seeing them all shown together?
Yeah, actually this exhibition gave me another aspect of the work, and I also discovered another connection, like I told you before, between salt work and other silkscreen work. Before I installed my work here, and I didn't think the connection actually. But after put everything, it's like actually like all in the flow.
So what's your relationship with this series of work, and how did you choose to use this material?
That series, that is also in a landscape or in a hardscape, but I was searching how I can project from 3D to 2D, because like originally I love creating a 3D. So for me it's really difficult to create something 2D. So why not, if I can print in 3D into like a 2D, the paper or board or whatever. So I started to create in 3D with the copper wire or another material, a little bit hard, and also aluminium or tin foil, the things. And then I used the pressure machine and print it. So this is part of my experimental work or experiment.
There is still this touch of light, actually, because whether it's copper or aluminium, you still have the reflecting properties, and which is very fascinating that we can see that on the work, even though the work is black and white, even though the work is printed on paper and it's 2D, it feels like it's reflecting light. It makes us like look at the material and look at the work completely differently. If there is a path to follow in the exhibition, I would advise to start with the cork side and go through the landscape, and then enter maybe like this search of light through the work on the aluminum foil. And just in front of it, we have those two pieces, which are another exploration of light, but through, like you were mentioning before, intuitive drawing. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah. This is also, I use consciousness. I wanted to take or extract the landscape in light, or light landscape behind the inner landscape we don't know. I don't know, you know.
Yeah.
Because, for example, I know my face, but definitely I have another faces. You know, this example. But so maybe but I can imagine certain my landscape inside of my body, but definitely I have tons of like infinite the landscape inside of my body emotionally that I wanted to discover. The landscape I don't recognize, but I knew what I know, but I don't know. So I started to draw with the black things like a pencil or whatever, you know, the charcoal. So I used the consciousness just like
spontaneously.
Yeah, more like spontaneous about my consciousness. I did like drawing, and then after I extracted the light behind this drawing.
And is that through this exploration that you decided to print it on black paper as well, to give like a different perspective on the light?
This one is black ink on the black paper, and for me, in black is also the light, and for me stronger than the white.
It's really captivating our sight when we walk through the space, and I really advise everyone coming to the space to look at it from different perspective, from different angle. I always give this advice when looking at work because it gives you a different perspective, but it's especially true with this artwork because the lighting, and especially if you come at different time during the day. Today we have a cloudy day, and so the way it will live with the space and the light in the space during the day will reveal different parts of the drawing as well. I'm actually quite curious, what goes through your mind when you do those drawings?
Profoundly, I think I use my consciousness or to access to the landscape which I don't know, and also I want to discover.
And do you have like a kind of a ritual that you do to go into this feeling, or is it really just part of your process which you do very spontaneously and without even like thinking about it?
Actually, when I saw my several previous lives, the lives or lives, and now I don't know if I really believe or not, but anyway, I access to my previous lives, and one of them, and I was in Europe, and I'm pretty sure it's like an island, and almost like not castle, but yeah, since I was living in a big house, you know, and I have a kid and I have a husband, and the husband is like he's like a soldier, but really, you know, the top class that time, and I was a painter. And Then at the dining room, it's quite a big dining room, like almost like a 20 meters, like a longer. Some table is quite long. But I saw my painting like, I would say like, it's not, the painting used like 3 walls. And I don't know why, I wanted to realize the painting. Yeah, but I don't really remember what it is. And it's like a landscape, but I was not sure. But I want to manifest the painting. Then I started this inner landscape. That's really beginning.
But it's so interesting because many artists have shared that the first idea, or like for especially writers, I think about writers, like they have this idea in a dream and then they start writing, or they have this thought and then it's just like a scene, like they visualize a scene and then they start writing a movie. So for me, it makes total sense that you have this image. It's like it came to you and now you want to manifest it in real life.
So that's really beginning of this series. And I started with the small pieces of work and I print it. Then for me, because I already like it, a little bit like a preoccupation. So when I see the result, yeah, I can see like a landscape in Europe, somewhere. Then I started to do, but not 20 meters in serigraphy and on the silkscreen, but I started to do like maybe, like 7 panels, seven panels, like 6 meters silkscreen.
And actually is connected to the piece which is just behind you. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
So this is also, I start from spontaneous drawing. I like textile. So I wanted to print on the tissue, on the fabric. I was playing in how I can use silkscreen medium and also and fabric together. Maybe 3 things, like a canvas style. If I can put the frame behind the fabric and a silkscreen, and also like a property of fabric. But I don't really like something really solid. I think it's better to put the frame backside of the silkscreen work, but at the same time I wanted to keep a free atmosphere, like I explained to you before, and the wind blows and the fabric move or something like that. That's why I a little bit like angle is a little bit like not straight. So that piece, and I was a little bit researching, or I wanted to experience and a relation between property of fabric and also rectangle silkscreen image. And also that time I was wondering if I can put the frame, the back side of the silkscreen to show more like a canvas work. But personally, I really like property of tissue as kind of like a flexible material. So I didn't want to put frame behind the work. Just I play with the all 3 materials. So I just tones out the fabric, but depends on the fabric. I can, torn straight, or sometimes like it go into different direction. But that one is kind of like I couldn't do it straight. So I used this like opportunity. Then I printed this the rectangle, follow the other side. So that's why the left is like the line of the fabric, and the line on the image is like parallel. But the other side is not. how I can put the image, but the image is like a 3-dimension, it's like with the movement, but on the not really canvas, but the canvas material and a little bit the rectangle. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, just I was playing. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about your relationship with nature, but when we were talking mostly with your bigger installations, you told me that also you have this wish through your work to help people reconsider their relationship to nature, kind of think about their relationship with others as well as with their environment. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
Before we think about relationship with nature, I think it's better we should know the connection and relationship with their own nature. And once they connect it to themselves, after it's like all same. So all same energy, all same. So we naturally started to think about the relationship with nature outside of our body. You know, the nature outside of our body and nature inside of our body is the same.
I think we touched on this a little bit when we had the round table. If you're following us on YouTube, you're going to be able to check out our round table that we had through the program of the exhibition, because we filmed it and now it's available on YouTube as well. So check out the description box below for the link. Through the exhibition, there is always this sense of experimentation, of travel, of journey, of exploring with our environment, with materials around us. And I'm quite curious, actually, what's your expectation, or what do you wish for viewers, for visitors, people who interact with your work? What do you wish for them coming here and having this experience?
That's a really difficult question. I mentioned to you earlier, and my work is the energy. So actually when I work, I create the energy and the light, and it's a liberty. And also the most importantly, so invisible power of art, and it's immortality. And so if viewers can feel something, because the energy is essential to the planet, essential to the human planet. So if they can catch the frequency and energy through my work, from the work, hopefully they can feel their inner landscape or inner heartscape, which they don't recognize. Kind of they discover their new face, or knew their quality.
So thank you, Masami, for joining us. The exhibition runs until May 31st at Impact Hub Tokyo, and we are so happy that it was the launch of our cultural agency, IKO Art Discoveries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for a discovery of Masami's solo exhibition, Paysages, intérieurs, on view at Impact Hub Tokyo until May 31st. We are so happy to have organized this show at IKO Art Discoveries. You can find more details on our website, ikoartdiscoveries.com. And if you're interested in purchasing any of the works, they're available. Let us know at contact@ikoartdiscoveries.com. As always, make sure you leave us a comment for any work which caught your attention, or any comments you may have. We'll be happy to talk with you, and you will find more details in the description box below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and give a thumbs up to this video. Any support counts, and we will see you guys next time. Matane!